Like many orcs, beast snaggas have a particular propensity for one thing. Aside from violence, it's destroying great monsters and enemy vehicles, though where they differ from tank bustas or ludas is they prefer to do it with melee weapons, as well as not using things like battle wagons or tanks that the other orcs may use. Hello everybody, my name is Spoons Rattling, and today we are covering the beast snagga boys of the Orks, one of the newer units in the orc lineup that I quite enjoy. I think their aesthetics are quite cool. Beast Snagga boys come in at 105 for 10 or 210 for 20. They have a standard orc boy stat line of 6 inches of movement, toughness 5, a 5 plus save, 1 wound, leadership 7 plus, and OC 2. Fairly standard for the points cost if a little fragile. The knob does gain an extra wound though. In terms of ranged weapons, they all come stock standard with a Snagga, which is pistol, 12-inch range, 1 attack that hits on 5s at strength 4, AP 0, and damage 1. The thump gun is blast at 18-inch range with D3 attacks that hit on 5s at strength 6, AP 0, and damage 2, which is certainly an interesting profile, but how inaccurate it is, I wouldn't say it's worth bringing. Every orc comes standard with a choppa, which is 3 attacks that hit on 3s at strength 5, AP 1, and damage 1, so an extra pip of strength over normal boys, which does help against things like Space Marines, and in the WoW will help against things like the Imperial Guard or Eldari. If one takes a thump gun, they get a close combat weapon, which is 2 attacks that hit on 3s at strength 5, AP 0, and damage 1, which is still alright, though I would generally keep them with the choppas, and the knob gets a power snappa. The power snappa has 4 attacks that hit on 3s at strength 7, AP 1, and damage 2. This is a fairly standard sort of big choppa profile with an extra attack, and isn't as strong as the power claw, but given the rest of the squad's improved melee, I think it about evens out. They do come with a Feel No Pain 6 Plus at standard, and their ability is Monster Hunter. Each time a model in this unit makes an attack that targets a monster or vehicle, you can reroll the hit roll. This is generally useful, and is very useful for any characters that they can lead with. In general, this is a very solid datasheet for 105 points, though they aren't the most tough, and the Feel No Pain only really helps against damage 1 weaponry. In terms of loadout, everyone comes standard with a choppa and Snagga, the boss comes standard with a power snappa, and for every 1 in 10 models, one can swap out his choppa and Snagga for a thump gun and close combat weapon, and as fun as the thump gun is, looking like a traditional grenade launcher, I would generally leave it at home, or if you are using it, just run it as a standard boy. In terms of buffing options, there's 3 main leaders that the Beast Snagga boys can be led by, and 2 of them are fairly mediocre. The Word Boy has okay anti-infantry shooting, but unfortunately has bad melee, and his special ability risks mortal wounds and only has battle shock debuffs. It doesn't even force a test. Leave this guy with the kill rig. In terms of the Pain boss, his 5 plus Feel No Pain isn't very useful, as you already have a 6 plus Feel No Pain, and as I mentioned, a Feel No Pain on a 1 wound model isn't that useful to begin with. His melee is okay, but he would need some reworks, as his main ability is to heal other characters, but Beast Snagga boys do not have the ability to be led by 2 characters. In terms of the Beast boss, however, this guy hits really hard in melee and gets devastating wounds on the charge. And with his anti-vehicle and monster rules, this guy is a huge damage buff for the unit and makes them very, very consistent. Do remember, if you're fighting something you're wounding with the anti-vehicle rules, I would generally use his choppa just for the more attacks. Though, without a little bit of extra juice, they will struggle to take down super tough things like a Land Raider with average rolling, though if you give them a buff like, say, Warhorde sustained hits, or even extra AP from the Big Hunt, they could very easily do it. In terms of detachments, they are of course good at Warhorde, as most orky units are, and they are solid targets for things like Unbridled Carnage, which could help with them taking down a bigger enemy, especially with a beast boss in tow. The Big Hunt is a detachment all about Beast Snaggas, so unsurprisingly, Beast Snagga boys are really at home there. They really like the extra AP and other possibilities with stratagems, and they can of course get sticky objectives to help with the objective game through a character if you're running multiple units. I think that is a fine choice. Cult of Speed, I would say that knobs are generally the better choice for the disembark and charge, but these guys are probably a fine alternate pick if you would prefer to run something a little cheaper or you're strapped for points. In terms of Dread Mob, they tend to use a lot of Gretchen, and also would prefer to have better objective game, as their walkers and shooting will generally be strong enough to deal with things, so I would use regular boys here instead. And in Green Tide, obviously you would think these guys would work there, but remember, Green Tide only applies to normal boys, not Beast Snagga boys. Obviously, if you're running that, only use normal boys. In terms of bully boys, you could have them trail behind to clean up the scraps, but I would say in general, this is another detachment where boys with their superior objective abilities are probably in the better choice category for this detachment, just because you'll have such powerful knobs and mega knobs and Gazagol and whatever it may be, dealing a lot of damage that the extra damage these guys have isn't super useful when sticky objectives could be instrumental in winning the game. Overall, though, I would really say these guys are only bad in Green Tide, where they get no buffs, and everywhere else they are quite competent choices. And speaking of competition, boys are their main competition. Boys are 20 points less than these guys, and boys offer less melee damage, though they are still quite fighty, but they have superior objective rules. That's sort of the trade-off. They're cheaper, better objectives. These guys are more expensive with better melee prowess. If you just need general grunts to do objectives in the midboard, I would say that normal boys are better, mainly because you could get a squad of normal boys and a squad of Gretchen for not too much more than you would get one unit of beast snaggas for. However, if you do need extra muscle, beast snagga boys are definitely the way to go, just because their overall power is a little better and the beast boss alongside them can be so devastating for so relatively cheap. In terms of how I would use the Beast Snagga boys, it's fairly standard. They are just simply more dangerous core troops choices, almost like assault intercessors to normal intercessors for the Space Marines. Their increased muscle is very much appreciated against certain things like Space Marines, and in the WA, especially against things like Eldar or Imperial Guard, where they will be wounding on 2s. Those rerolls are super useful for the beast boss that's likely accompanying them, though even with their feel no pain, do keep in mind they aren't very tough and aren't much tougher than normal boys, especially given the big points difference. In general, for frontline fighters, I probably overall prefer boys, but I don't think there's too much in it, especially if you're using Beast Snagga boys with their beast boss and they're jumping out of, say, a truck. They certainly won't be tearing down knights and will struggle with things like land raiders, but for 185 points and just a little bit of extra buffs, I think them taking down just about any vehicle that isn't Titanic is very impressive. And anything lighter than that are of course in great danger. Light vehicles will be torn to pieces by these guys. And all kinds of infantry will be very, very sad if these guys get to charge them. However, do keep in mind with their low AP they won't be blending Terminators of any kind, though they will still be able to stack quite a few saves on their enemies. And as I mentioned, for their price points, they are very dangerous, and those rerolls give them huge consistency, especially once you introduce the +1 to hit from a beast boss. And even on their own, they are very competent fighters against infantry, though aren't very good at taking down vehicles or monsters. Anyways, I'd say that this unit is quite a powerful one, and definitely one to consider if you have a need for extra muscle while also having some slight prowess on objectives, as these guys are somewhere between knobs and boys when it comes to power and objectives. I've been Spoons Rattling. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.